course with her many years ago, not many years ago, it was a year and a half ago. Her and her husband Andre were teaching a great course in Taupo, and great to have you with us today. Hey, but highlight of the holidays, anybody? Anyone want to share really quick? Yell out. Watching disc golf. Watching disc golf, and they travelled to Taupo to see that, and then he went to Auckland to see that, and Chris made it into their disc golf national TV thing. TV, yeah. He wasn't playing, but he managed to get on the screen, and I actually thought you were playing when I saw a video of you there as well, so just claim it, man. It's so good. But hey, Shell, highlight of summer?
We have packed a lot into a month. We went to the South Island to see Sam's sister. We had teenagers going in lots of different directions, different camps. We had the privilege of doing a 6-day adventure experience called JH Aotearoa, and Pete and Gabby were there as well. But it was very cool. We went down waterfalls, literally. We went whitewater rafting, and the biggest waterfall drop in New Zealand. We climbed up ridiculously high poles and had to jump like a couple of meters in front of us to catch a trapeze called the Leap of Faith, literal. And basically the whole 6 days was getting you out of your comfort zone, doing really hard things, feeling the fear and doing it anyway, but really having some special one-on-one time with your teenager and learning all this really cool stuff about parenting and purity and relationships and conflict resolution. But yeah, Sam and Zuri did it last year and said, you've got to go to this experience. So we did that.
Cool.
And I felt like a teenager again. I'm like, I would not do this unless I was in this environment with everyone saying, you can do it, and spurring you on.
So good,
Crazy.
So good. So JH it's like a parent-child adventure experience, really great for connecting parents and kids together. Yeah. We got 4 spots actually end of this year available. We've got a businessman in Auckland who's sponsoring it. It's about $2,500 per child, and that's because there's amazing activities, but also there's amazing food as well. We've got 4 of those being sponsored. So if you know somebody this year, we want to get people registered early. Let us know, and you can apply for that as well. But yeah, we had a really, really great summer, and I trust you guys had a good summer too. My highlight, which I shared with the team, was I went on a road trip with my 2 boys, actually. We did a last-minute spontaneous let's go back to Queenstown. And my sister had a house available for 3 weeks, free, and a car available. And we're like, let's get a cheap flight on New Year's Eve. Why wouldn't you, right? And so went back and had a really good summer with them. But I had a really cool time driving back with the boys. 6 days driving back with 2 boys in a tiny little camper van. And I'm glad to be in a house and back in Tauranga as well. But it was a real highlight spending time with them. Hey, but if you are visiting for the first time, just want to wish you a huge warm welcome. Thanks for joining us today at O2. It's so good to see some friendly faces as well. And alongside my wife, Michelle, we're the pastors here at O2 Church. I want to wish you a huge warm welcome. And
there's been lots of birthdays over this month. I've genuinely missed you, been praying for you, and hope you've had a really refreshing break. There must be about 10 people that have had birthdays. So after the service, make sure you stick around for some cake. Christine Burgum had a birthday. Namale had a birthday. Braden Baker, Amy Revel, Tessa Revel. There has been multiple people.
Kathleen had a birthday.
Kathleen had a birthday.
Mara had a birthday. Susanna had a
many.
birthday.
So we're going to celebrate you after the service with some cake.
Hey, yeah. And I had a
birthday.
Did you have a birthday? I had a birthday, hun. It was our first birthday not together.
It was very weird.
There's no marriage issues going on. I was just on a road trip with the boys. So first birthday in 25 years, I think. We haven't seen we did see each other because you FaceTimed me as well. But yeah, I turned 45, everybody. 5 years away from 50. I am now wearing glasses permanently. I've been resisting it for about 4 years. I wore them for a little bit. And I'm really old. I'm wearing what they call progressives. You know what I'm talking about? Where one pair don't work, you can't do long distance, short distance. You got to get these weird progressive things. So that's me. I'm in the dad club. I'm a real dad now with glasses. Praise the Lord. Everyone say praise the Lord. Who wears glasses? Who does not wear glasses? Who should wear glasses, but they just don't? You just refuse to wear them. That's so cool. It's awesome. Hey, a couple of notices. Next Sunday, we've got our first all-church lunch for the year. And really excited about this. We're actually, Peter and Valida have kindly opened their house in Pais Pa for this. And they got a really cool, entertaining home and beautiful for hospitality. And so everybody's invited straight after the service. It's a shared lunch. So obviously bring some food, but bring some friends as well. It's a great opportunity to bring some friends, just connect, have fellowship. And I think shared lunches are one of my highlights. I love just hanging out after church. So get along to that.
Bring your sun hat, bring the sunscreen. They have a beautiful little pond in their backyard and lots of lovely grass space. So bring the kids. I'm going to be soaking in the sun. We're going to have some nice food. If it does rain for some reason, which I'm really praying it doesn't, it'll be pushed forward to the next week. So if it's not next Sunday, it'll be the Sunday after.
Awesome.
That'd be cool. Love to have you there.
Yeah. Hey, well, I want to introduce our speaker this morning. His name is Chris Jenkins. Everyone go, hey, Chris. Alongside his beautiful wife, Jessica. They've got 3 girls, awesome part of the O2 family for many, many years. We've been chatting over the summer, collaborating on a message on his heart for O2 called The Prodigal Son. Everyone say Prodigal Son. We're believing 2025 could actually be a year where the prodigals come home. Amen. Where people we love, people we care for, sons, daughters, mums, dad, they rediscover what it is to either walk with Christ again or actually walk with Christ for the first time. And this is a message I do know is close to Chris's heart, and really looking forward to hearing it. So can we give it up for the Frisbee golf champion of O2 Church, Chris Jenkins, this morning. Awesome.
Yeah, Chris.
Thank you. I've just had my laptop lock me out, so give me half a second because I need someone to keep me on track. Cool. For those really keen to hear about disc golf that heard me last time, that's not the subject today. I'm sorry. I was all disc golfed out. We got to follow the lead women's card at the New Zealand Champs yesterday, and it was awesome. And we're probably going to be on their coverage too. So after I spoke last time, actually, I said to Sam, I don't think I have anything else that I could speak about with such passion. So I don't know if there's going to be another thing for me. But then it happened real fast. So this is something that's just really happened for me, and I'll share the story of how. But just like to start off in Luke 15, 1 to 5. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. So Jesus told them this story. If a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go to search for the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he's found it, he'll joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. Has God ever brought anything to your attention quietly? He could boom from heaven. He could smite the ground. He could make a donkey talk. It'd be way easier. Hey God, do I marry this one? Boom. Oh, okay, she's toast. It makes the conversation easier, right? Imagine you're talking to a friend, but one of you could only talk through a megaphone. In fact, this mic's convenient. Let's try it. Hey, Michelle, how was your holidays? Now, in the conversation, whatever we say, everyone's going to hear what I have to say, but only it's going to be much harder we're not going to get a meaningful conversation. Like, hey, RJ, how was your holidays? It's great, thanks. Cool. Like, this is it's much more emotional, much more connected. We can have a conversation. We can connect with each other much more closely. This is how God wants to hang out with us. He wants us to stop, to pause what we're doing, to tilt our head to one side. I've had the experience a fair few times where a phrase or a subject comes up 3 times in a very short amount of time from different places. So late last year, I had this experience with the prodigal son story. In our second to last service, Pete went way off script at the start and was speaking to a visitor. I'll actually use a clip from that shortly, as I think he told it well. Actually, Ernie, I haven't imported that video. Are you able to find the video in the folder, please? Now everyone knows it's my fault if this doesn't happen. Later the same day in a night service, it came up again, the same story. And the next day in my daily reading, I find myself in Luke 15 where the story is. And that had already been set. I was already on track for that to occur the next day anyway. So it all made sense. Had the 3 times. I've got teenagers. My teenagers are being teenagers. So I should welcome them back. Cool. Easy. I understand what this reminder is about. Thanks, God, for the encouragement. I needed that. But the story kept coming. It was almost every day in all sorts of different contexts. Listening to a song on the car that Wednesday, and imagine this in David Crowder's voice, I'm not quite growly enough. For the child of God that's far from home, the one who thinks they're too far gone, I'm throwing out another prayer in faith. There were 3 or 4 songs like this on the same day while I was driving to Auckland for work. And for those that got the newsletter the last few days, you may have heard a few of those songs together in the playlist. And another day that week, Life FM had one of their sermon sound bites in the ad break that mentioned it. It was everywhere for me. It was starting to feel like God was communicating through the megaphone. Oi! You haven't got it yet. I thought I did. In our last service here last year, I was standing on the back. I can't remember who I was talking to. If it was you, I'm sorry, because I stopped listening at some point. I think whoever I was talking to brought up the story of the prodigal. I think it may have been mine, right? Whatever they said, I got what seemed to be an instant download of understanding into my thick skull, and it all made suddenly sense to me all at once. This story is it's about more than me. So 3 times, I get it, cool, but it's more than me, it's for someone else as well, and we're meant to do something about it. Sam and I have been talking about this thought since then, and he's asked me to share this journey for anyone here that might be on that list of someone's. There are 3 stories in Luke 15, all with roughly the same message. The first we started with, about a lost sheep. The second one describes a woman who has lost a valuable coin, and she spends all day cleaning her house until she finds it. Everything stops until she finds that thing that she had lost that was precious. The third story is about a lost son, traditionally called a prodigal. I'll let Pete tell it if I can. You found the video? Hey! As this moment was the start of the recurring reminders for me last year. For context, so Pete's thrown out a script. He's speaking directly to someone sitting right next to me at the couches at the chair there. So he thought he was speaking to someone next to me. He actually missed, and it really got me. So if we can roll that, please.
If you have an opportunity to read the story of the prodigal son, it is about a father who hears that his son is about to return home. And despite an inheritance or a piece of his estate being lost, despite his son squandering his inheritance, the father, on hearing the news of his son coming way down the road, says, let's get out the best meal, let's just get the fatted calf, let's start preparing a banquet for my son because my son is about to return, irrespective of the fact that his elder brother has been working the farm, while this young kid has been squandering his pieces of inheritance, everything right to the last cent, on a wild lifestyle. The father, in response, begins to put his sandals on and runs down the road toward his child. Because the beautiful thing about being a parent, the beautiful thing about being a dad, especially in my sense as a dad, is that it doesn't matter what my children do. It doesn't matter how bad it might get. The moment that I know that they come home,
The last line.
I'm running to the door. If you have
Cool.
an opportunity
Thank you.
to...
Pause for effect. Love how you did that, Pete. That freeze. At a camp last year with my daughter, a JH that you've just heard that Michelle and Pete have both been to, they told a story one night of the modern prodigal. There was a young man who made a real mess of things. Choices that hurt his family, that hurt himself. In anger and pride, he walked away from home, thinking he'd be better off without them. But life didn't turn out how he'd planned. He found himself lonely, broken, and ashamed of how far he'd fallen. One day, when he couldn't bear it anymore, he wrote a letter to his parents. It wasn't easy. He poured out his heart, apologising for everything he had done. He said he wanted to come home, but would understand if they couldn't forgive him. How could they? How could he even ask face to face? He asked for a sign. "If you'll have me back," he wrote, "tie a white sheet to the big tree where the train passes our house. If I don't see a sheet, I'll keep going and I'll never bother you again." The day he boarded the train, his stomach was in knots. The closer he got to home, the harder it was to look out the window. What if there was no sheet? What if they're still angry? He turned to the man sitting next to him and said, "I can't look. Can you watch for me? There's a big tree by the little house just up ahead. Let me know if you see a white sheet on it." As they came around the corner, the man grabbed his arm. "Look." The young man looked out the window and he couldn't believe what he saw. Not just one white sheet on one tree, but every tree, every branch, every bit of fence along the tracks was covered in white sheets. I told people before the service, this is going to be a tough one. Thank you. This is also my story. Oh, glasses and tissues, this isn't great. When I was 15, I had a severe mental illness called teenager. It made me think I knew everything. Has anyone else suffered from this when they're younger? Does anyone know someone who suffers from this right now? I used to go out on my bike at night when my parents were asleep. Oh, I just gave my parents the link to this. Anyway, often, they know. Often with a friend that lives up Kaitamako Road out in the country. I got quite fit, so the joke was on me, really. Over time, I reacted more and more strongly to being told what to do. After a bigger fight with my parents, I left on my bike down to the end of Matapihi Road to cross the rail bridge. Just before I got to the bridge, my dad pulled up and body blocked me from the bridge to stop me leaving. I came home with him, but then Mum said I was grounded. I'd never been grounded, but you can't ground me if I don't live here. I came back to the house for my 16th birthday and was welcomed home. We set up a tent down the driveway with a few friends. One of my mates went for a long walk to meet his girlfriend and learned a lesson on the way. If you stop to pee on a fence, make sure it's not electric. My parents saw me make some poor decisions also. I was never that much trouble. Always held down a job, but I certainly wasn't living the sort of life they'd hoped for their son. And I ignored the God that they'd introduced me to. But over and over, they kept welcoming me home. When I was 20, I finally moved back home. I'd had enough of doing things my way. I'd found a God that loves me and asked for my parents' help to start again. I had my shot. I had a hope of a new beginning. I had hope of starting again. A couple of weeks later, I had a phone call. I was going to be a dad. That wasn't the end of my story. I had a few more rounds of going my own way, with God always pulling on me. Hey, remember me? He always loved me. He was always gentle, and he always welcomed me home. More recently, I found a new role. When my daughter Jade was 15, she had a severe mental illness called teenager that made her think she knew everything. I've asked her if I can share this, and she has read every word. While I was getting all the prodigal son story reminders last year, Jade wasn't home much. She was mostly at a flat with friends and was quite happy to not come home. Thank you very much. Over a couple of months, she would promise to be home on a certain day, but then something much more important would happen at the flat, and we'll just do tomorrow. Then she lost her phone, so I had to show up to even ask the question. I drove to the flat and knocked on the door, just waiting for rejection. When she said yes, it was awesome. Like, we're close. We always had fun together. We still hung out. But that drive was really tough, not knowing what was going to happen. Then her friends were asked to leave that flat, and she still didn't come home. I didn't know if she had somewhere to stay with. I didn't hear from her for a couple of days. She did have other friends to stay with, it turned out, but I didn't know which one she was with, and with no phone and no address, I had no way of reaching her. On Christmas Eve, I hadn't heard from her in 2 days, and I had no idea if she was okay or if she knew what day it was. I was working in my office in a cabin on the front lawn. About lunchtime, I heard a knock on the door. I've never jumped up like that before. My daughter was home. My daughter was home for Christmas. And she had a big smile on her face seeing my reaction. Now imagine God's face when he saw you come home. Oh boy. In my Bible app, I have a plan that every day gives me something from the Old Testament and something from the New Testament, just enough that I make it through the whole book in a year. Some days I get really into it, writing notes. Most days are not those days. A lot of days I just put on an audiobook. One morning in the holidays, I just finished a typical story from the Old Testament. There's a guy called Hoshea ruling in Israel. They all did bad stuff, and finally they got carted off to Assyria to go learn a lesson. By this point in 2 Kings, it's starting to get a bit monotonous. What? The Israelites went the wrong way again? It just repeats over and over. Anyway, I opened John 11 next and read the title, The Raising of Lazarus. And straight away I knew this is going to be in your sermon. Turned out it's actually really important to the story of the prodigal. Now, this is the story is 44 verses, and I want to finish my lunch version. But I do want to focus on a few parts in particular. Jesus had a mate called Lazarus, who lived in Bethany with his sisters Mary and Martha. Now, the three of them weren't in the 12 disciples, but they were pretty much on the edges of that. They show up in a few stories, so it's pretty clear Jesus was really close with this family. One day, Jesus is up somewhere around Galilee. This is here to Auckland sort of distance away. And Lazarus gets really sick. But the family know Jesus can heal, so they send messages to go find Jesus. But when Jesus heard, he didn't rush off straight away. He stayed put, telling his disciples in verse 4, the sickness won't end in death. It's happening to bring God glory. After 2 days, Jesus finally said, okay, let's go to Judea. The disciples were worried because he'd been attacked in Judea recently. But he told them that Lazarus had in fact died. I love his next words in verse 15. I'm glad I wasn't there earlier because now you will really believe. By the time Jesus arrived, Lazarus was already buried in a cave with a stone across the entrance. Mary and Martha were in mourning. The three of them lived together. They're clearly a close family. But Jesus asked them to trust him, and they did. When they got to the tomb, Jesus said, roll a stone aside. Martha worried about the smell. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Jesus reminded her in verse 40, didn't I tell you you would see God's glory if you believe? So they rolled the stone away. Jesus prayed and then shouted, Lazarus, come out. And out he came, still wrapped in grave clothes. Now, of course, Jesus could have healed him beforehand. No matter what was wrong with him, if he had a drinking problem, if he got caught up chasing women, if he had a social media addiction, if he liked to sleep in on a Sunday morning, if he was violent or abusive to those around him, he was dead as a doornail. He's 4 days in the tomb, wrapped up like a mummy, and Brendan Fraser wasn't there to wake him up either. There's a photo of the mummy to put up, but joke's gone now. It doesn't matter how dead our prodigals are. It doesn't matter where they're at, what they're hooked on, who they're listening to. We serve the God of Lazarus, who loves them even more than we do. Growing up, every morning at breakfast, my family would read together. Each of us who could read sat around a table with our New King James Bibles and took turns to read a verse each, first through a psalm and then through a chapter from the book of Proverbs. One of my mum's favourite verses was read once a month, Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. With my own daughters, this has been a source of guilt to me when I've seen them make poor decisions. Could I have trained them better? However, King Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, who wrote that proverb, his son Rehoboam split the kingdom 3 days after taking over. It's not just our kids. You might have a brother or sister that you love, but for some reason you can't talk about faith with anymore, and it's eating at you. You might have a friend who once went to church but disappeared one day and you haven't really got the right words to ask why. If you're like me and feel like you've let down a prodigal in your life, please believe God's love for you is desperate and complete. There is nothing that you could do that could make him love you any less, and he wants you to be free from guilt. And no matter how good or bad the origin story, everyone chooses their own path. In Deuteronomy 5:10, God promises to lavish unfailing love for 1,000 generations on those who love him and obey his commands. Our past is gone, it's healed, it's forgiven by the God who can forgive the unforgivable. And we serve the God of Lazarus who can heal the unhealable. So why did God keep throwing this story in my path? I believe there's 3 reasons. Firstly, we all know people that we love who have known something of faith but are not currently walking with God. It may have been a long time, and of course we keep praying and loving them. But God's timing might have stretched the limits of our hope. And thirdly, we serve the God of Lazarus, and at least for me, the time to ask is now. After this message, I'd like to ask you to share your people, everyone that's been on your mind throughout this message. Crowder writes in his song, Truth Be Told, "There's a broken branch on the tree of life, garden overgrown, covered in vines, stuck out here on the other side, truth be told. A day is coming for coming back home, back to where the heart belongs. Feel the yearning, can you hear the groan, truth be told." There's one more character in the story of the prodigal son who we haven't spoken about yet, the brother. This is our role in the story. God is the Father. He's calling them home, and he's ready to forgive when they're ready. We're the person just like them, who might have walked the same road, faced the same decisions, and the only reason we're here right now is our Father chose to rescue us first. There might be a chance to call them home ourselves, an invite to a service or an encouraging text, if we can do so gently. But the only person who will bring them in the door is the Father himself. In 1 Timothy 2:1-5, Paul writes, "I urge you first of all to pray for all people. Ask God to help them, intercede on their behalf, and give thanks for them. Pray this way for kings and all who are in authority, so that we can live peaceful and quiet lives marked by godliness and dignity. This is good and pleases God, our Saviour, who wants everyone to be saved and to understand the truth." Our prayer matters. As the brother of the prodigal, we've got to be okay with it getting a bit out of our comfort zone around here. With teenagers in my house, I see some pretty weird stuff. There's hair dye on jeans, there's new piercings showing up, there's weird jokes. I think O2 is pretty accepting in general, but it's something to be ready for. Weirdness means growth. It means we're going beyond the small group that knows their these from their thous and use the right prayer voice. Matthew West, in his song Truth Be Told, writes, there's two songs called Truth Be Told. They're both the same name, referenced here. He writes, there's a sign on the door says, come as you are, but I doubt it. Because if we lived like it was true, every Sunday morning pew would be crowded. But didn't you say the church should look more like a hospital? A safe place for the sick, the sinner, the scarred, and the prodigals like me. If we're asking God to bring our prodigals home, they will be hurt. God's the ultimate doctor, but a hospital needs nurses, orderlies, a chaplain. We need to be ready for them. From now, I'd like to join you in praying for our collective prodigals. If you have a parent, sibling, friend, niece, nephew, son, daughter, who has known God at some point but isn't walking with him, I want to join you in praying for them. And I know others here will be with me. Just like the shepherd left the 99 to find the one, we're asking God to bring back those ones in our lives. I'd like to collect the first names of these people that we deeply care about, and we can make this available as a list to pray for anyone that would like to join in this journey. And just the first names. We don't need the full biography. We don't need to go through and check. It's not about that. Whatever it takes for you to know that people will be praying for them. I'll be praying through these names every week, and if you feel the same tug that I feel, I'd love to stand alongside you. In 2 Kings 19, Hezekiah was facing a problem far bigger than he could handle. He got a letter from the king of Syria, I think, and he took that letter to the temple and he spread it out before God and cried out for help. As we close the service, I'd like to ask you take a piece of paper from under your seat and just write the first name of each person that you know is living outside of God's love. There's pens on the chairs, there's paper under the seats. You might have a few names. The seat next to you might have spare paper. And when you're finished, I'd like to bring them all up to the stage so we can come up here and pray for them together. In a moment, we'll wrap the online service so we can come together up the front. If you're online and have loved ones you'd like to anonymously add to the list, send a message to O2 Church Tauranga on Facebook or email hello@o2church.org.nz. Just before we come up, I'd like to pray. Father, thank you for your patience, your warm embrace, your pursuit of prodigals like me. You've rescued us from a path that led to destruction and filled us with your spirit and with a desire to share you with those around us who we love. As we sit for a moment, please bring those people to mind that we love, who aren't walking with you in the way that they have before. Our family, our friends, our colleagues, our children. We know you love them desperately, and we know they need you. For each person here that you're calling to take action on this in prayer, please cement that knowledge on their heart as clearly as you've stamped it on mine over the last few weeks. Call us to your path and use us as you need. For each of us with a name to bring forward, please grant us wisdom in every interaction we have with these friends and family that we love. Give us divine inspiration to speak up or shut up exactly when you need us to. Help us to mirror your love.